to at least go through some reform agenda now with a new king. So there is the promise. Whether it will work, it will not, there are all these question marks. But there is an attempt. There is a genuine attempt to change things, to improve things. So you see this side by side with what is happening in Iraq, side by side with the situation in Iran, side by side with the situation in Palestine or in Lebanon or in the Sudan. And yet you could go on for an entire lifespan not being affected or not even seeing the other side of the Middle East. Still be living in Kuwait, and you can look at the map in Kuwait or Qatar or Bahrain or Saudi Arabia, and you'll see that you're in the midst of an explosion. You can go by not feeling or hearing or being affected by it as much as is the case in Texas, in Houston, or in any other place in the world. So you get in the Middle East this sense that despite conflict, despite war, life can go on. And despite what's going on in the next door country, we can focus on development and build better ports and create better institutions, waiting for them to come to the senses and to make their peace, and then we can together work. But we're not going to stop until they stop. Nobody's going to wait for anybody else. I think this is what you see today in this new model, that the Middle East, the sections in the Middle East are moving on. Other sections are going through tough transitions. We have a duty to help each other. The world has a duty to help a region in stress. I would emphasize this as well, not only among us in the Arab world, but also the world, because the world, every country in the world, whether it's the US, whether it's Europe, has gone through their stress times. America, last century, even in this century, went through lots of turbulent times. So did Europe, 2 world wars. So regions that have a better experience with dealing with stress and stressful regions can help a lot regions that are going through difficult times in order to manage a globe that is more connected, more related, more travel, more, I mean, one place impacts the other in such a way that never happened in the past. So we are in a global village despite our differences and wars and hates and struggles. We are much more united, much more closer to each other, despite whatever conflict and hate that can come between us. And this is a reality of this post-Soviet Cold War collapse that brought this entire earth together in such a way and brought all the animosities and all the hates and the September 11 and all the other aspects and the Iraq war and the casualties and all of that closer to each other. So in a way, we become more connected, yet the problem is ours as well. We own the problem as well. Doesn't mean there is one way to solve the problem or there is another way. That's always debatable. But we own the problem together. Some of us have more responsibility than others, but we do own the problem. And if we can make it less painful, why not, in order to move to our next phase? Because then after the Middle East, there'll be another region in stress. And the other region in stress is Africa. And so we have to get over with this before, and you never know what happens in the China continent and in the Asian continent. You never know if there is a sudden collapse in economic terms. I mean, we've seen that in the 70s, we've seen that in the 80s, we've seen that in the 20s, you never know what happens in America, you never know what happens in Europe. I mean, things can happen. The economy particularly can major setbacks and recessions. So to be ready is rather than leave the globe open to worse and worse conflicts that can affect us all in the worst ways. So in this model, you actually see the Iraq scene, but yet in Iraq there is effort. A lot of effort by youth, by young, by NGOs, by non-government organizations to stop this kind of fighting and civil war, if we can name it or call it as such. So in a way, there are lots of, even in places that we say this is a war zone and it's all ugly, it's all negative, there is a lot of positive things in the midst of this battle. There are people saving people. There are people working on stopping things, and there are efforts